Hello and welcome to Stork'd, the podcast, in which we explore the many ways to build and define family. This is your host, Julia, and today I want to talk about the word chaos. If you're anything like me, especially if you have a 2-year-old in the house, the word chaos might be like the word of the year. It might be the thing that feels most resonant to you because family lives are chaotic and parenting is hectic and messy and complicated and beautiful. And the reason I'm bringing up the word chaos is because this next guest, Jenna Hermans, is an expert in chaos. In terms of her family life, she and her husband have a big, beautiful, blended family that they've worked really hard to nourish and support. And we're going to talk about her journey to meeting her husband, blending her family, and how that family life has evolved over time. In order to blend her family, Jenna had to get real with herself about some preconceived notions she had about what it means to be a step-parent based on her own parents and step-parents. We're also going to talk about chaos in the context of Jenna's methodology to calm the chaos in your life. Who better to trust about calming chaos and finding a true north amidst the chaotic life is somebody who's blended families and has 4 kids in her household. She's written a book called Chaos to Calm, and it is exceptional. It's a great toolkit for anyone who's got kids in your life or who works or has life in general, because life in general is hectic. You can hear it all from Jenna herself. Don't forget, if you love this episode, share it with a friend. You never know who wants a little bit of calm in their chaotic life and could benefit from hearing Jenna's story, or who might be thinking about blending a family and could benefit from her. And if you love Stork'd, and I really hope you do, don't forget to like, subscribe, leave a review, follow us on Instagram, and sign up for the newsletter. Here's Jenna. Jenna, it is so good to chat with you again. Welcome to Stork'd, the podcast in which we explore the many ways to build and define family. How are you? Welcome to Stork'd.
Thank you. Doing well. I'm so happy to be here with you today, Julia.
Oh, I'm so thrilled to have you. And, even if I tried to give an introduction for all that you do, I don't think I could fully capture it. So would you mind sharing with our audience a little bit about who you are and what brings you to Stork'd today?
Absolutely. So I'm a mom of 4. We have a blended family scenario. 3 bigs who are kids from my husband's prior marriage. They're currently 16, 15, 13. And we made together a 6-year-old. I'm also the co-founder of our business, which we founded together, called Be Courageous. We work with Fortune 1000 companies infusing courage into the business at various levels, doing workshops and consulting, coaching, experiences, speaking engagements, and stuff like that. And I'm also a high performance coach. And lastly, I'm the author of a book called Chaos to Calm: 5 Ways Busy Parents Can Break Free from Overwhelm.
You love the C words: courageous, chaos, calm, right? It's like the Kardashian of performance, whether it's family performance or business performance. And I hate to invoke the Kardashians, but I do like that they always use the same letter. So, okay, let's talk about or unpack some of these concepts. What does it mean in your life to be courageous?
Oh, being courageous in my life is noticing when something's scary or is hard, something that's really daunting, and moving forward with it anyway, doing it, right? Mm-hmm. It's being uncomfortable and being okay with being uncomfortable, knowing that or hoping that what's going to be on the other side is something of benefit and that it's going to be what I need and what my life needs and what other people need, that it's worth that discomfort on the other side.
Isn't that the rub though? Because you can sit in discomfort for a really long time thinking, okay, maybe things will get better, or maybe there'll be this pot of gold on the other side, but you don't really know until you're looking back retrospectively saying, oh, wait, this thing that I did that put me out of my comfort zone, that challenged me and stretched me, was for the better. And you've got a couple of really great examples in your life of taking the courageous step, right? And some things that I've heard from this conversation and prior conversations is launching a business, embarking on blending a family, embarking on having a little when you're accustomed to raising older children, writing a book and sharing all of your thoughts around calm and chaos and family management. with the world. I mean, these are courageous, big leaps. Do you think that there's something in you that just inspires you to be courageous, or is this something accessible for all of us?
I think it's a mix of both, right? I think there's a part of me that has practiced courage for a long time. And because of that practice, right, it's like a muscle. The more you use it, the easier it gets, the stronger it gets. And so my courage muscle is quite strong, right? I'm buff and courage. And with that it is something that can be learned as well, right? Everyone has to start somewhere. And so with courage, that you can achieve a mentality and a mindset of I'm going to actively work on my courage, right? Like you can get there. And it's by planting different seeds, by exposing yourself to different mental models, by creating a space maybe of psychological safety for yourself where you can feel safe to be courageous and go outside of your comfort zone and try something with the knowing, right, that even if it quote unquote fails, and I hate that word because I think there's no such thing as failure, there's only learning, right? But with that mentality of like, if this doesn't go as I had planned or wished or hoped, I am going to learn so much in the process. And that alone, having that mindset can be the thing that's courageous, that pushes you over to say, okay, I'm going to go try it. I'm going to go do it. I'm going to take that leap.
You're inspiring me to go do something bold right now. And I don't even know what it is. I'm like, what should I do? Well, one of the things that you and I have in common, and I think yours is an example of retrospectively looking back and saying this was the courageous move and it was the right move. And mine was an example of maybe looking back and going, what the hell was I thinking? And that is beginning to blend a family. So, we both have dated people who have kids. And in your case, you've resulted in big integrated family relationship. In fact, you've written very explicitly about the concept of not calling your kids stepkids. And you've talked a lot about the blending process. And the audience knows that I've had a very failed relationship with somebody who had kids. Let's talk about that bold move a little bit and talk about, if you could, like, start from the beginning. What was it like to meet your partner and to know that he had children, and tell us a little bit about what transpired from there?
Yeah, for sure. My husband and I met at a personal development workshop, and we were friends for months before it was no longer a friendship, before it moved romantic. And I knew he had kids from the beginning. I was running a preschool at the time. So, and his kids at that moment were, when I met them, ages 3, 2, and almost 1. So they were tiny little beings and ages that I felt incredibly comfortable with. I have an early childhood education background. I ran a preschool for 5+ years. That was my first job out of college, was working at a preschool. And I love that age group so much. Yeah. So it was so natural to integrate in with them when our friendship was blossoming, and to spend time with these children and hang out with them and see what was going on. And what was actually quite interesting, because I had this background, and he's a dad, and right now a single dad, and doesn't have all the background and education and experience like I do. I've had more years. I've never parented a child, but I have so many more years of hanging out with this age group and knowing developmentally, what is in their best interest and what are the milestones that they should be at, and not just emotionally or psychologically or socially, but also like physically, like a 3-year-old shouldn't be drinking a bottle anymore and that sort of thing. So it kind of, I started integrating in quite early in the influence in their lives, and without the intentionality of potentially becoming a mother. That was not on my radar at the time. But our relationship shifted from friendship to romantic, and that really put me in a predicament, because I have step parents, I have a stepmother, I have a stepfather. I've written about that, my relationship in growing up in both those scenarios. There were some really great elements and some not so great elements in that relationship. And so that was a big part of informing whether or not I wanted to become a step parent for myself. And in that, I ended up actually ending our relationship, and we split up for a while, because the idea of me being a stepmom was something that I was really concerned about, because I didn't want to negatively impact their lives in any way. And I have my own unresolved stuff
I'm hearing a couple things. First of all, I'm hearing this like based on your experience with step parents, that you feel this sense that being a step parent would negatively influence a child. But at the same time, one of the things that can be really tricky is the fluidity of parenting and when you jump in, even with your friends' kids, right? When do you jump in and say no? When do you jump in and say maybe this bottle isn't appropriate? When do you jump in and, be an adult relationship for them versus just like a fun aunt who happens to be nearby? And when do you put a boundary up and say, that's not my role? I'm not the parent. I'm not parenting right now. It sounds to me, if I'm hearing you correctly, that even as friends with your childhood development background, you were jumping in a little bit and then the dating relationship complicated that further. That's interesting because some of us might go the other way, just sit and wait in the sidelines until an appropriate time to jump in. So can you talk a little bit about that?
So, when I met the kids and during our friendship, it was like you were describing the other more typical way of approach of like, I'm here, I'm like Aunt Jenna hanging out, all the fun, I bring toys and games and we're just kicking it. We go to the beach and, play around and just being a caring adult, making sure like everyone's safe, but not playing a parental role. And when I was saying like the guardianship and all those things started creeping in, it was actually more just, I was telling their dad, right? I was like, hey, did you know that if at a certain point, you don't want, the mouth with the teeth and all the things to be sucking on a nipple of a bottle because how that affects the teeth and, all of that. And so I was like, just because I have this background, I can't not tell you these things. Take it or leave it, right? You're the parent. I'm not the parent, but I'm seeing things and I can't not say when I'm seeing things that are flags for me that could hurt them, right? And so I just would be like, here, did you know? And here's a little thing, but not doing that directly at the kids or with the kids saying like, oh, you can't have that anymore. Like, no, I made sure that came from the parent, not from me.
Okay, that's a really important distinction about informing a friend and eventually a romantic partner around information that you had versus directly engaging with the children. It's a very complicated and messy line to walk, whether you're at the playground and a friend's kid is doing something unsafe or whether you're dating somebody. Okay, so the relationship turns romantic and you freak out and say, wait a minute, I'm not so sure I want to be a step parent. Can you walk us through what was running through your head in the moment when you said, I've got to walk away from this relationship for a minute?
Forever.
Or forever.
I thought forever ended. We had a beautiful breakup. It was very, very thoughtful, very clean breakup. And I left.
You don't hear that very often. Like I very rarely hear somebody say, I had a great breakup. That says something about living courageously and turning chaotic moments into calm moments, which are two of the things that you speak and teach on.
There was nothing that was wrong between us. It's not like the relationship fundamentally had any issues and there was no ill emotion around the intention of ending the relationship. Nothing that would say like, oh, you two won't work out. Like this isn't good, not a good relationship. And he understood where I was coming from. He respected that was my decision and had said from the very beginning, you can be as involved or not as what works for you. You can walk away at any time and that's on you. This is a lot, right? 3 kids under the age of 5. At that point, we're dating and serious and all the things like that. That's a lot. And he's like, I understand. So we split. I'm devastated. You see in the movies, the ugly crying and the gasping for air because you're so sad. I'm like, no. That's all fake drama. That's theatrics. And I'm sitting there I can't control myself because I'm in my core, in my soul. I am so devastated by us breaking up. And I was sitting with that. I sat with my decision, right? And realized I made my decision out of fear of something, of a reality that didn't exist. And of being able, because I have the self-awareness and because I've noticed and I've had these experiences, I've had good, it's bad, it's, things that we've been working through and to make it better and all of that I can use all that to inform my parenting actually, and use all of that experience as a teacher. And how can I use that to do better and to reparent myself in the process, right? To do it differently. So in realizing this, I reach out to Kyle, my husband, and say, hey, I miss you. Can we talk? And thankfully, he said yes. And here we are, what feels like a bazillion years later with another kid and all of that.
Yeah. It's so amazing because we talk on this podcast inadvertently in a lot of ways about how either our fears or our expectations inform our decision making. So, for instance, solo parent here, if I were to let expectations inform my decision making, I would be waiting around until I found Mr. Right to start my family. And I had to do a lot of unpacking around what is it I truly want in order to decide that the expectations that have been presented to me are not actually what I want. And you explicitly identified that you did unpacking around what is the fear holding me back from this thing that is so right for me, which is my relationship. And that you ultimately decided it was a sense of your own perception around what a step parent could be, if I'm putting words in your mouth. Tell me about that process, because it's very rare for somebody to just sit around and think and think and think and go, aha, there's this thing that's blocking me from the path that I'm supposed to be on. And that is fear, or that is expectation, or that is whatever. Did you journal? Did you seek counseling? Did you seek conversations with friends? Did you spend time in nature? Like, what were some of the tools that you used to help uncover this block for you?
Journaling was my biggest tool. That's always been my go-to, is to write things out. I need to get them out of me in a way where I can see it, I can hear it, to make space for new. So I did so much writing and so much journaling, because majority of my friends didn't understand, right? None of my dear close friends, none of them dated anybody with children before. I was the first and only one, especially at that age that we were in. That's just not something that's typical there. And so it was the writing. I did a lot of alone time, walking and thinking, and then coming back and writing some more. And that was how I process. That's how I get things out of myself, and how I'm able to move through things is writing.
If you were to coach somebody on this moment here, how to identify whatever is holding you back, whether it's fear or social expectations or something, specifically around love, romantic relationships, family relationships, what might you encourage them to do? Is there a journal prompt you might give, or a question you might ask a dear friend to inspire them to think differently?
To ask around, what is the fear, right? What are the fears there? And then to kind of go back in time. When was the first time you felt that fear, or that you recognize the thing that you're associating with that fear, right? Like, what is it in your past that you're connecting to as though it's present now, as though it is the influence now, and then unpacking that and seeing the difference that is then, and that is that context, and this is now, and this is this context. Like they always say, you become your parents, right? Because that's what we know. Yeah. That's the default. But when you intentionally choose to use your experience as a teacher versus defaulting to it, you can say, oh, I'm going to do it different.
And you asking a coach a question as open-ended and nebulous as that would yield a result. And the reason I asked it is because so many of our listeners may be going through that moment where they're thinking about, what do I truly want and how do I uncover that? And I think there's a sense of figuring out what it is that you want, your desires, but also understanding what's holding you back, what's in the way. So I think what you gave was really useful. And I hope our listeners are taking away from that. Let's go specifically. Let's go away from the nebulous and go to the specifics. If you could articulate what you imagined step parenting to be, based on your parents' experience, based on friends or people that you witnessed, however you want to inform that, can you give us some adjectives to describe what you imagined step parenting was all about, the thing that made you walk away from step parenting? And then let's talk about what you've turned step parenting into. We'll do that next. But start with what was step parenting to you that felt like, ugh, I can't do this?
So I had different experiences on both sides. So I had a role model for both ways of being, of what I liked and what I didn't as a child. I put myself not necessarily in the parent role, in the step parent role, but I was connecting to what the child's experience was, because that was the role that I knew. And it was feeling like an other, right? It was feeling not included. It was feeling like there was not a sense of belonging. And there's this disconnect between kind of like the core family and then the stepchild. I also just want to note that my stepmom and I, we've been working on this, and my other siblings, like we've been working on this for a long time, which has been great and positive. But, back then, right, when I was a child growing up, it was really difficult for me. It was really difficult. And so thinking and projecting that into the experience that these three children might have with me if I default into my experience, that was the concern for me, is that I would make them feel inadvertently like others, like this is not where they belong, or they're different than if I make children, like they're not the same. This is not an inclusive environment.
I'm starting to see where your aversion to the word step comes from.
I wanted it to be clear that I had great experiences. Like my stepdad, I mean, he came into my life later though, and he just came in. He was my bud, but he integrated me in so beautifully, so beautifully. His whole family accepted me, so like open arms, like, oh my God, Jenna, your family, here you are. It's like, you've always been here. Right.
Yeah.
It was so glorious. And I was in shock. I was like, people do this? Like, that's how some people act, like with their new step, whatever. Like they're just like, yes, please, we love you. We don't even know you and we love you. And so I guess the intention there was just to say, like, I had role models on both sides of what to do and what not to do.
Yeah. So let's talk about, I'm going to use this word and I know you don't love it, but let's talk about the mental model of a step parent that you have now created for yourself or co-created with your partner. What does that look like? What are you trying to build for your family?
We never even used the word from the beginning. The word step was just not in our vocabulary. They just called me Jenna for a long time. I never asked them to call me anything. They knew we were together and we're living together, and then we got married, but I never asked them to call me anything, I didn't even refer to myself as that. I would say like, oh, I'm their other mother, but not their stepmother. Like, oh, I'm their mom and they have their biological mom, or, there's their mom and then I'm the other mom, or I'm the new mom or something, And I love the term bonus mom, which I don't think I knew at the time, but I probably wouldn't have used that either, to be honest. And they were just so young that I think if they had been older, maybe the approach would have been different, right? But they were just so young, and we were integrating so beautifully together that injecting something between us, like the word step or any other, like something that says this is not a full connection, didn't feel right.
Yeah, I appreciate that. It's almost like a barrier or creating distance. So as a mom now of 4 with teenagers and a little, can you talk to us a little bit about what your parenting experience has been like?
Ooh, it's been a journey. It's been a journey from my own identity in motherhood, of becoming an instant mother of 3 littles and becoming a mom before I was a mom. Like the evolution of, for many, pregnancy, birth, newborn, and kind of doing this natural evolution of parenthood, or of becoming a mother and evolving into that role. I didn't have that. And then obviously lots of people don't, or have it in different ways, right? Like you don't get pregnant, you do IVF, you have a surrogate, you adopt, whatever the way is.
Exactly.
But not that coming into it where I didn't intentionally decide I'm having children until all of a sudden, I'm deciding I'm intentionally having 3. Right. And it was fascinating because I was trying to invoke the mothering part of me when it didn't necessarily come naturally. Right. And in the beginning, it was kind of like I was showing up as my teacher self, right? As the preschool self. And I'm like, okay, here's how we do things and the structure and the routines. And it wasn't even from a mothering place. It was really like, I'm running a preschool at our house.
Oh, that's so
And so
interesting.
that was a really interesting approach, because then after I made a person, right? I got pregnant and birthed a newborn and all the things, make a person, all of a sudden I'm like, oh, something else went off. And I saw motherhood differently. And it didn't change necessarily a lot, but the intentionality in my approaches shifted. Because before, I'm just imagining, if they were my biological children, what would I be doing? And I had no idea. I was just, and that's where I put my like early child education hat came on. I'm like, this is what the science would say, and this is what my history says, and the education, and the experts in the fields, and all of that. But it wasn't.
Is it fair to say that your parenting was maybe more academically informed and that now it's more heart-centered, or is that not really a fair way of hearing what I'm hearing?
Because before it was very rational in how is this helping with them socially? Yes, academics is a part of it, but it was socially, it was emotionally, it was their psychological safety. Like, I'm thinking about it, all these different buckets of ways to support a human being, but I'm coming at it so pragmatically. And what shifted was the emotional element in conjunction with that logical, pragmatic approach as well. Right? Because
so it's so interesting to me to hear about how you jumped right into mothering and to motherhood, and that your identity and your relationship to mothering has changed over the years, particularly with the recent birth of your fourth child. Your family has changed a bit over time in terms of the amount of time that your kids are in your household. Is that correct? Do you want to talk about that at all?
When I met my husband and the kids, there was more of a 50-50 scenario. We're all living in Los Angeles. Their biological mom was, they lived like 2 blocks away from each other. So it was very easy. And my husband would travel for work. So it's like, okay, when he's home, he has the kids. When he's not, they go to their biological mom's house. Easy enough. There was a lot of movement that happened. She moved more south, and then they ended up being with us more full time because they just kept in their schools, and she would spend long weekends and holidays, and pretty much like every other weekend and long holiday sort of things, right? Like that's when she would see them. And then we moved up here. So she was still in Southern California. We moved up here, and she was like, oh, I want to have now the school experience like you guys did. She wanted to do like that tit for tat thing. Like, you guys got that. So now I want that.
Mm-hmm.
And we took a gamble and saying yes, because we had a feeling that wouldn't last, that she wouldn't enjoy that role and that much responsibility. So she says, I'm not doing that again. And the kids came up with us and have lived with us ever since. She ended up moving up here for a while, and there was again some movement with them going to her, and that we were the main house. And then it was like maybe more like 60-40, and then it went to 70-30, and slowly but surely it reduced, and she moved away from here completely. And then she saw them a couple times a year because she moved to Europe, and then it went to once a year, and it's been 4.5 years now.
It's really hard on the kids to have, I don't want to call it inconsistency, but change, a constant level of change in their relationships with the adults in their lives. How have you and your partner supported them through that change?
We're open with them, right? We're very honest. There's also things that we're protective over, but sharing that their bio mom is doing the best that she can with what she's got, and making the decisions that she needs to make for what she needs to do, right? And it's not because she doesn't love them, it's not because she doesn't want to be with them, but that she's making hard decisions and doing what she needs to do to take care of her. And that's, I imagine that there's going to be more that shows up in the future around maybe the concept of abandonment. But, I think we've done a relatively good job, and we keep trying at least the best that we know how to reduce the amount of traumatic impact or psychological impact on the way that things played out, and the lack of consistency or rather, it's quite consistent now, it's just not there, but her absence.
Yeah, I think it's really important to share this part of the story because, you talked about the perfect breakup initially with your husband. The perfect divorce would have minimal traumatic impact on the children, whatever that means. But in reality, in life, often we're working through situations that can be traumatic and can be difficult. And so parenting and supporting young people through those changes is really hard and important.
Absolutely. And even through the support, they're still going to internalize their experience in their way. So, but to be there and say, I'm here to talk without judgment, right? We're not trying to say anything negative about her. But if they want to say something negative, we're not going to back up. We're not going to say, yeah, you're right. Or we're going to validate their feelings, validate their emotions, but not like egg it on, to be supportive of where they're at and their feelings.
How are you supporting yourself to be the best parent for them in this transition? Do you have parenting coaches or counseling, or do you read books, or is there any resources that you have so that you can show up and be the best adult present?
I'm an avid reader. I'm reading everything under the sun all the time. I love to read. And so that reading and books have been my greatest teachers on how to be the best parent and partner that I can be, and how I take care of myself. I actually wrote a book about it. So that's, the chaos of, not only just having a family, whether it's one kid or four, and being that you've made people and you're raising them, or it's an integrated, blended situation, whatever it is that is your chaos, right? Like for me, I needed to take care of me so that I could best take care of all of them. And that's the basis of the book.
Yeah, let's talk about your book. 4 kids, integration, different ages, a couple moves here and there. And now, you've written a book about calming the chaos, about finding the moments of serenity in all of the intensity that is family life. It sounds to me like if somebody were in your situation, or if I down the road am in your situation, a book like yours, what I mean by your situation is maybe multiple kids, maybe integrating a family, maybe at an age where I feel overwhelmed by my kids' developmental needs, or at a point in my life where I'm stressed by my work and, the fact that I have to parent through that stress, or anything that I might deem chaotic, which is everything. A book like yours is exactly what I might need. Can you talk to us a little bit about what I might find in your book?
There's a breakdown of 5 different pillars of calm. And in each of those pillars, it talks about what are the actionable things that you can do, like straight away. What can you do right now to help yourself and to help own your calm, right? And they are tangible things, and they are mindset as well. So it's like, what can I do right now that's outside of my person? And what can I do inside as well to support my calm? And so those 5 pillars include efficiency, habits, community, communication, and self-care. And even though they're 5 separate pillars, they're all interconnected, right? At the same time, like for me, my self-care, part of my self-care is connecting with my community, being with people who fill my cup, who make me feel good, who make me feel in flow, right? Having these great conversations like with you, Julia, right? Having a great conversation. This fills my cup. This is a part of my self-care, right? And the commitments that I make to myself for my exercise, which I have built an efficient time in which I do it. It's become a habit. So it's so much easier for me to do it. I don't have to be like, oh my God, I have to get to the gym. It's like, no, I go, it's all good. Da, da, da. That's a huge part of my self-care, but that's also a habit, and a part of being efficient is how I make it happen. And so the book is filled with actionable ways to be able to have a relationship with calm in your way. So it has questions, it has moments of reflection, it has little moments of like, let's fill this in right now, stop reading, fill this in, take it in this moment. Don't keep reading anything. What was it that was back over there? There's a recap at the end of each chapter. Like, it is built for the busy parent to go in and be like, I can flip to this page and there's a thing and I can action straight away.
Yeah. And one of the things I'm hearing a little bit, tell me if I'm hearing this correctly, is sometimes in the gentle parenting or positive discipline space, the key is remaining chill under pressure. Your kid's throwing a tantrum, something's gone wrong, something's amiss, and you might feel that intensity build up inside you where you go, oh my God, I'm going to freak out right now. But if you can remain calm, then you can parent better. However, what I'm hearing is it's not necessarily in the moment of calming yourself down. It's setting yourself up for success on a day-to-day basis so that you're living in a constant state of calm, or at least, enabling yourself to be as calm as possible under the circumstances.
Oh, super fair. Yes. And that's the idea, right? It's not like, yes, there are the tools that when the chaos happens, when the overwhelm happens, that you can bring yourself out of it.
Yeah.
But the bigger idea is, how do you create that calm infrastructure for yourself so that you're going about your everyday with more calm, so that you're approaching any conversation or interaction or task that you have in front of you with more calm. It doesn't need to be that it is an overwhelming moment or that all these things are overwhelming and chaotic, that's when that muscle, right, that we talked about earlier, that your calm muscle then gets flexed. It's like you're practicing using it all the time, so that in those moments that are like those huge chaotic moments, they're actually not so chaotic anymore, because the way that you interpret your chaos is different. And that's where you build that system. You have these systems in place, and that's your protective barrier, so that it's there and you notice it. And you're like, oh, that looks like chaos, but I'm good. My nervous system's good.
It's interesting. I'm a systems person. I love having like a nice structure. I love having like a process. There are people in my life who are averse to systems. Anything that's too structured, that's too formulaic, that's too prescriptive inspires a desire to resist and push against. Can a system like this work for somebody who really rejects systems overall?
Because a lot of it is also mindset, right? It's how you think. It's thinking differently, or in creating new relationships with thoughts and mental models and things. And the thing with the book is like, you don't need to take all of it for it to work. You could take one nugget, be like, that's it. I'm just going to do that one thing. And that can have such a ripple effect for you. Like, the book is filled with so many ideas and bits of ways of being able to like put all these tools in your belt, right? That you can pull out as needed when you need them. But for someone who doesn't like systems, who's totally like anti-system, there's so much goodness still in the book for someone who doesn't want that kind of structure. And even if you just take one thing away from the book, that's a win.
So when we first talked, you were like weeks away from launching this book, and now it's out there in the world. Have there been any surprising reactions? Like people who have said, oh, this was the piece that I most gravitated to. And you're going, that piece, really? Like, has there been anything that you just are surprised about how other people are using it or integrating it into their lives?
What's been really surprising has been the dads that have come to me and said, wow, I've really enjoyed your book, right? Like, I was in Sacramento yesterday doing a book talk at a bookstore there, and I have some of my best friends live in that area. I went to go visit her and her family, and her husband comes up to me. He's like, oh my God. So I've done this and I've done that. And I'm like, amazing.
That doesn't surprise me at all, because we talk a lot there's been a lot of conversation lately about how the gender imbalance in family management is so prevalent, and that we both underestimate and undertask dads in running the family. And yet, when you integrate them into the family management, everything is more calm, right? So there's not one person who is responsible for all of the things. And this goes for gay couples as well as heterosexual couples. And it's the families that I know where the dads are involved and structured are the ones that seem the calmest. So I'll give you an example. A good friend of mine runs an enormous construction company in Massachusetts, and he has 4 kids. And he said to me once, when I do breakfast, I wake up early, I work out, and then I cook breakfast and I have it all laid out before the kids even wake up. And we have such a calm, easygoing morning, and everyone gets to school on time. And this is an example of structure, systems, process, and calm. It does not surprise me at all that dads, as well as moms, as well as any other caregiver, might find this incredibly useful. It seems genderless.
And it really is. And when I started writing this book, I didn't actually have parents in mind at all. It was just for any person who is feeling overwhelmed and wants to do things differently, right? To put some structure or mental models in place, or have some things that they can feel less overwhelmed in their day-to-day life.
So I've got 2 questions for you. One is a general question I ask at the end of every podcast interview, and that is particularly interesting for you, right? You've got this psychology degree, you've got the organizational development degree, you've done preschool education, you've blended families, you've made a person, and your family dynamics have shifted over time. What does family mean to you?
Family means to me, just means love. It's just love, because we have people that we choose to have as family, and then there's people who are automatically family. But what's the underlying theme of those people who I call my family? It's love.
Yeah. That's wonderful. Thank you. Where can we find you? If I want to get the book, if I want coaching from you, if I want any of the amazing resources that you provide, or to read some of your writing, where can I find all that?
On my website, jennahermans.com. There are links to my writings, to the book, my coaching, to the podcast that I'm on. And my book is found everywhere books are sold. And my offer is to go to your local bookstore, and if they don't already have it in stock, ask them to get it for you, because then you're supporting local and owning your calm at the same time.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. It's always a pleasure to connect with you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to Stork'd with your host, Julia Carroll. This podcast is changing the conversation around the ways people define and create family. If you like what you hear, please support us by sharing with friends and following on Instagram at Stork'd_podcast. We also always appreciate it when you rate and review us wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. For more information, visit storkedpodcast.com to sign up for our newsletter. That's STORKD podcast.com.